Hey book friends and potential enemies, let's talk about books. This is a catch-up video for my book reading and purchasing in May 2025. If you're coming to this later, well then I guess it doesn't matter that I'm recording this at the end of June. Lovely to have you here anyway. In May I didn't get much reading done. That's actually a lie. You will see. I didn't read many books, but I did purchase many books. At the start of May, I went to Melbourne with my kid and her friend. Melbourne's exciting for many reasons, not least of which because I currently live in a little country town, population like 5,000 people. So it's a small place. We don't have a bookstore. We have the newsagent that has bargain bin crime thrillers like J.D. Robb and that Nora and that sort of thing. And the post office also has some books, like a tiny little book bin that has things like, you know, that everybody in my family has killed someone, that guy, but not that book. It's, you know, everybody on this train has killed somebody, or, you know, not even the popular one. That's the quality of book that we get where I live. The post office though, they have cookbooks, and then the cookbooks don't sell at full price, and so then they get on the bargain table for $10, and I would say half my cookbook collection has come from the Corowa post office for $10 or less. Do I need cookbooks? No. Do I cook anything but chicken nuggets? No. And here we are. Anyway, so we went to Melbourne. My kid and her friend, they were looking for clothes in all the secondhand, vintage, upcycle-y stores, but they're nerds, obviously. So we went to bookstores. First place we went to was Readings or Readings. Now, there was a debate on the radio at work a couple of weeks ago about whether it was Readings or Readings. Either way, I went there and I looked at everything and I had to come away with something. I said I would buy one book when I'm in Melbourne. I'll come away with something. So eventually I found The Labyrinth House Murders by Yukito Ayatsuji, translated by Ho Lin Wong. Now, I picked this up because on the Books Unbound podcast, which I was catching up on, so this is an episode from back in January or something, one of the hosts, Raylene, was talking about this book that she had read and enjoyed called The Decagon House Murders, and is from a series called The Bizarre House Mysteries, and they didn't have the Decagon House Murders, but I wanted to buy a book in a bookstore, so I got this one. Dase is translated from Japanese, classic Japanese, so I bought it. The cover's really nice too though, isn't it? It is such a grey, rainy day, perfect for staying home on the couch and reading a book. Unfortunately, I have to go to work, so I am filming this video in the minutes I have between getting ready for work and going to work. The blurb says, the famed mystery writer Miyago Yotaro lives a life of seclusion in the remote Labyrinth house. When Yotaro invites 4 young crime authors to his home for a birthday party, they are honoured to accept. But no sooner have they arrived than they are confronted with a shocking death, then lured into a bizarre, deadly competition. As the twisted contest gathers pace, murder follows murder. Blah, blah, blah. You know how it goes. So, locked house mystery, Japanese classic translated crime fiction, maybe. Then I was only buying one book in Melbourne, and then we went to another bookstore called Minotaur, which, if you're not familiar with Melbourne, Minotaur is, it used to be called like pop culture, but now it's just regular culture, minis, figurines. I don't know if they sell Warhammer and stuff anymore. There was a whole floor of comics and then a little book section. They had some really cool figurines from the Fallout TV show, which you can imagine I'm obsessed with because I love Fallout 4, which I did not buy because of having to carry them home. I would have paid the exorbitant price. Anyway, that's who pop culture stores prey on, is people like me with adult money. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. So I picked up Claire North's Notes from the Burning Age because Claire North has a book about to come out or has just come out, and somebody was talking about it on Blue Sky. It sounded amazing. I looked up who Claire North is. They wrote the first 15 lives of Harry something, which has been on my radar for a decade at least. And this one also ended up on my wish list. So it was in the bookstore and I revised my buying one book to buying one book from each bookstore. Let's go with the blurb. Venn is a holy man, a keeper of ancient archives. His duty to interpret archaic texts, sorting useful information from the heretical ideas of the Burning Age, a time of excess and climate disaster. Such material must be closely guarded so that the ills which led to that cataclysmic era can never be repeated. But when the Revolutionary Brotherhood approaches Venn, pressuring him to translate stolen writings which threaten everything he holds dear, he must decide how far he's willing to go to save this new world and how much he's willing to lose. I mean, archivists and holy men and dystopia. Like, sign me up. Absolutely. I wish I was reading this right now. In fact, it might be next. It literally says the first 15 lives of Harry August and 84K that Claire North has previously written. So that one I'm very excited for. And look, the cover is also giving. I'm feeling it. Then I revised the one book purchase from each bookstore to vibes. And also got a Minotaur, China Miéville's Iron Council. Now, turns out, which I didn't... At this point, I had bought Kraken, which I talked about in the last video, and I had read The City and the City, and that was amazing. And I've put my glasses on and now I can't actually see you. That was amazing. And so I'm like, I'm a China Miéville fan, sign me up. So I purchased Iron Council because it was there. I think they also had The City and the City. And didn't even look at the blurb, just bought it. And when I got home, I realised it literally says the first words. The third novel in his amazing imaginative sequence, focused on the fabulous city of New Crobuzon. So I've done that very classic booktuber thing of getting the third book in a series rather than the first book. I'm not worried because the first book is Perdido Street Station, which everybody talks about. That is the China Miéville book that people have talked about, and I'm pretty sure it's a movie. I'm not reading that blurb because it's the third in a series, even though I think they're only loosely connected in the world. Not going to read the blurb. The cover is cool. I will get Perdido Street Station because having read more than one Miéville now, I am a fan. Then we went to Dimmicks, which is a chain, but I think some of them are independent and some of them are company stores. I don't actually know. But anyway, the Dimmicks we went to in Melbourne was massive, and the children, who you know are 17, had a blast. And I found the Decagon House Murders. So let's read the blurb on this one. The lonely rock-bound island of Tsunojima is notorious as the site of a series of bloody unsolved murders. Some even say it's haunted. One thing's for sure, it's the perfect destination for the K University Mystery Club's trip. But when the first club member turns up dead, the remaining amateur sleuths realise they will need all of their murder mystery expertise to get off the island alive. As the party picked off one by one, the survivors grow desperate and paranoid, turning on each other. Will anyone be able to untangle the murderous fiendish plan before it's too late? This is again translated by Kailin Wong. It's the first of these, what are they called? Bizarre House Mysteries. I read it. We'll talk about that in a sec. Then it was my child's birthday and I had to take her and a group of her friends to a neighbouring town so they could do whatever birthday shenanigans were planned. I went to the secondhand bookstore there, which is actually awesome. It's run by a community group. The proceeds are used to fund like the Repair Cafe and the community garden and all those community programs. It's a very artsy, hippie, community involved place. And so in this bookstore, which is in an old church, I picked up Peter Frankopan's The New Silk Roads, The Present and Future of the World. Now this is a revision of The Silk Roads, which has been out for ages. When did this come out? 2018. I don't know when the first one came out. It'll say in here somewhere. Anyway, this was on my wish list to buy new, so it was cool to pick it up secondhand in pretty good condition. The blurb here says, in an age of Brexit and Trump, the themes of isolation and fragmentation permeating the West stand in sharp contrast to the events in the East, where ties are being strengthened and mutual cooperation established. This prescient contemporary history provides a timely reminder that we live in a profoundly interconnected world. Following the Silk Roads eastwards from Europe through China by way of Russia and the Middle East, best-selling historian Peter Frankopan guides us through the global reverberations of continual shifts in the centre of power, all too often absent from Western headlines. Obviously, once you've written something as a history book, you can't update it for literally what is happening today. But I'm keen to read it. I'm really in the mood this year for the history of the Middle East and that Eastern Europe, which I have a basic knowledge of Eastern Europe from what I studied in my degree, but I haven't done anything in the Middle East in particular since year 7, which I counted and is 30 years ago, more than 30 years ago. So we'll see. This next one, I bought it, but I'm not going to read it. It is a nostalgia buy, and that is Letters from the Inside by John Marsden. John Marsden was a prolific Australian author in the 80s and 90s, and probably through to the 2000s, but I was out of the middle grade YA genre by then. He became a teacher and a massive advocate for teaching in Australia. And Letters from the Inside is a story that I loved as a teenager. It was first published in 1991, and I probably read it 93, 94. It is the story of two girls who are writing letters to each other. It's epistolatory, and they're pen pals, and it slowly emerges that one of them has a secret where she's in prison, and the other one has a secret in which she's, I think, being physically abused by a family member. And so on the surface, when they first start writing, they're lying and pretending everything's fine, and then their friendship deepens and the letters get darker and more intimate, and because they're letters, it cuts off at the end and you don't know what happens. Yes, all the last letters are one of them writing to the other one saying, where are you, what's happening, please respond. So, in the age of pre-internet, that was really impactful on me. So I probably wouldn't read it again, although it's really quite short. This is 146 tiny pages. But I should have just read you the blurb. I gave you all the spoilers. But yeah, big part of my early teen years, so I bought it. John Marsden came to my school once and signed a copy of the book that had just came out. And he had given this whole speech about don't be apologetic for who you are. Don't say sorry. Unless it's a situation that calls for sorry. And then I went up to get my book signed and I said to him, I love this book. I read it in 8 hours. And he said, oh, well, it took me, 8 months to write. And I was like, oh, sorry. After all that time where he's like, be yourself. And then I just automatically defaulted to sorry. That is my prevailing memory of John Marsden. Then I went to my local indie bookstore, which is, still an hour away, and picked up this book I had pre-ordered, Written on the Dark by Gavriel. This one is set in medieval France during the 100 Years' War. I could read you the blurb now that I have actually read the book. It won't be spoilers. Now I have to pronounce names. Tavern poet Thierry Villard is notorious for his bawdy and rousing verse. Intimately familiar with rogues and scandals and a stranger to the halls of power, he is the most unlikely of people to be swept into the deadly contests for the throne and brutal warfare. But Thierry is indeed drawn into all these things on a savagely cold night when he is forced into solving a vicious royal murder. Thrown into the deadly machinations, is it machinations or machinations? Because I want to say machinations. Thrown into the deadly machinations of aristocratic society, he meets his poetic equal and crosses paths with a young woman driven to lead her country's army into glorious battles. Blah, blah, blah. I read this. We will talk about it next time. And finally, I was in the bookstore buying books, and this just happened to fall into my cart. Now, this is a book I've been looking at for months because of the cover and because it is a history of Mesopotamia, which I just said I'm keen to be reading right now. So I bought it. It's called Between Two Rivers, Ancient Mesopotamia and the Birth of History by Moudhy Al-Rashid, who is an archaeologist. Thousands of years ago, in a part of the world we now call ancient Mesopotamia, people began writing things down for the very first time. Historian Dr. Moudhy Al-Rashid reveals what these ancient people chose to record about their lives, allowing us to brush hands with them millennia later. The call number on this one is 935, which is the history of Mesopotamia and the Iranian plateau. Oh, that one would have had a call number too. Come back, Frankopan. 909. Well, 9 is history, and a thing that's ending in 9 is history. World history. I perhaps could have just guessed that. Let's talk about what I read. First of all, I read The Decagon House Murders. Now, I started this on the train, and then this became my on-the-couch book. I always have 3 books on the go. I have my audio book, my couch book, which is usually physical, and my nighttime bedtime reading, which is usually on my Kindle. Now, it had been talked about on the podcast as an homage to Agatha Christie, and in particular her book, And Then There Were None, which is where 10 people are lured to a house on an island. They're stuck there on the island. Then murders start happening, and they have to solve who is doing the killing. And it comes down to, the murderer and the detective. And that is what happens here, except it's a group of students from university, and they're all part of the crime club. They give themselves names based on famous crime authors. So we have, where are we? Poe and Agatha, that sort of thing, named after famous crime authors. But this one's a bit different from And Then There Were None, because you have the POV of the students who are on the island in the house where the murders start happening. And then you have the POV of some other students as part of the crime club who didn't go to this trip, and they are solving the crime as well, because even though they don't know about the murders on the island, there was a disaster that happened on the island a few months before, and there were murders then as well. And then these notes start coming up about what happened back then. And so the people who are still on the mainland of Japan, they try to investigate those murders, not realizing that murders are currently happening. I didn't like this book at all. The whole time I was wishing that I was reading And Then There Were None instead. I didn't vibe with the language, which I don't know if that's a feature of Japanese, if it's a feature of this author, or if it's a feature of the translator, because I haven't read much translated Japanese fiction. And there was just a lot of instances where the dialogue would segue from one topic to another topic and literally say so, or a dialogue would happen and then an action would happen, and then the characters would literally say, as we were talking about blah, blah, blah. Oh, it was very plain and unnuanced text. And I didn't like that. It made me really angry, because that would not fly in a book written today in English. But it is not a book written today in English, so I have to give it some grace for that, because I don't know the context from which it came. The other thing that really pissed me off, and again, I think is the context of the culture and the time, is that 2 women go on this trip to the island and they're staying in the Decagon house. It's a house with 10 sides. That's why it's called the Decagon House Murders. They the two women who go on the trip are always the ones in the kitchen. They're always being the ones told to make the tea, to prepare the food for the guys who are their equals, students who've gone with them. And that just made me so angry. So angry. But again, it's probably an artifact of its time and its place. But I just couldn't vibe with it. So ultimately, I wanted to be reading Agatha Christie the whole time. How does that bode for having bought another one in this series before buying this one and before reading this one? I don't know. I don't know. Also, the resolution of the murder was clever. I didn't pick the murderer. Usually it's the one that has the least motive, but this was done in a clever way that, of course, I will not spoil, that made it really tricky to pick who it was and not why, but who. The other book that took all of me, and you'll see why when I show you how thick it is, was the Forsyte Saga Volume 1 by John Galsworthy. And this is an omnibus. It's made up of 3 books and 2 short stories. Let's check. Yes, it has 3 main books, The Man of Property, In Chancery, and To Let. And then between those stories there's interludes, which are little connecting stories. One is called Indian Summer of a Forsyte, and the other one is called Awakening. I love this. It's a reread for me. I read it the last time in 2013, so it's over a decade. I've seen the TV series adaptation so many times. I think that's by ITV. And the show is very close to the book, which I like. It is the story of, it's actually the story of a woman called Irene, but it's told from the point of view of all the men in her life, pretty much. So it starts out, she's married to a man named Soames, and she doesn't get on with Soames. They expected different things from their marriage, and Irene wants out. And she meets somebody who she falls in love with and tries to leave with. But that somebody is engaged to Soames's cousin, which is a little bit awkward. Then as the series goes on, it's about the Forsytes and how they see the world and how the world changes them, but also how they interact with Irene and Irene changes them. So we have not just Soames, but Soames's uncle Jolyon and Jolyon's son, also called Jolyon. And we have the way that they perceive Irene in the world. But it's also about, for Soames in particular, he's the man of property. He's a collector of fine things that he wants to, that he holds on to while it's valuable to him. And when Irene leaves him, that's the thing that makes him angry, because he collected this fine thing and it didn't stay in his collection. And eventually Soames has a family with someone else, and those women also find things that he has collected and added to his life, but he can't control what they do. So that's a learning moment for Soames. I mean, you can't get into the nitty-gritty. All the Forsytes are like that. That's the driving factor of the book, is the Soames are people of property. They're people of money and making money, but not in the ranks of titles in England. And the way that the world is changing, this book starts out in the 1886, and it ends after World War One. So it is a generational saga. It's going to have drama. It's a bit soap opera-y. It's a really pleasant read. In the book, I found I had much more sympathy with the character of Soames, because you're in his head and you can understand why he thinks the way that he thinks about the world and about Irene and about events that happen over the course of these 40 years. But at the same time, the show gives you more insight into Irene. You see more of her point of view, and that's Irene in here is a reflection of how everyone else interacts with her and thinks about her, whereas in the show she's a person of her own agency. So I like them both for different reasons. If you're familiar with the book, the part that I like the most is Indian Summer of a Forsyte with old Jolyon, and Irene. And I have no interest in reading more because the second book is all about Irene's child and Solmes's child, and they both go to America. And what happens there, I'm just, nah, don't care. And then the third one is about, like, just extending the world. It's about cousins of the Forsytes. But I do like it. And also, there's parts in the show that I miss from the book. There's lots more of the character of Darty in the book, who is Solmes's brother-in-law, and he's a cad. And there's lots more just the life of Darty in the show. There's lots more of, there's a cousin called George, I think, who's a bachelor, and just a wry observer of the world and of the Forsytes. There's more of him in the show, but there's more of course, the interiority of everybody except Irene in the book. So love it. It was great. Oh, the sun's coming out. And so that feels like time to wrap up this video and go to work. I will see you for more book chat next time.